Welcome to Illicit Liaisons, the podcast where we cover the good, the bad, and the naughty of romance fiction. I'm Jenna Harte.
I'm Butler.
And if you're ready, let's talk about illicit liaisons. So, Ellen, what you got going on these days?
Or not? I'm working on a couple of novels. Working on historical fiction, working on another mystery, and I'm actually reading The Secret Life of Violet Grant for my book club, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. It goes back and forth between Violet Schuyler, who lived in 1912, and Vivian, who's living in the 60s, who I think it's her aunt. I have to look back at that, but supposedly there's she murdered her husband, and Vivian gets this suitcase of hers in the mail, and she starts digging in to find out, because she's never heard of this person in her family, because obviously there was a scandal attached to her. Whoa. And so she starts digging into it. And so the way the author wrote it is we're going back and forth between the two time periods and reading the stories of both the women and their love life and what happened and what really happened to Violet Grant.
Now, do you meet over Zoom or do you meet in person?
We are meeting over Zoom now. We obviously used to meet in person, but I think, in March and April, we just kind of put everything on hold to see what was going on in the world. And then in May, we were desperate for conversation and to see other people. So we started meeting. And actually what we found was meeting on Zoom, we get more people because if people are out of town or anything, they can just Zoom in. And so I don't think we're going to continue it on forever, but for the time being, we're doing well with the Zoom and we're getting a majority of people to show up rather than kind of a little more helter-skelter what we used to have.
Right. I have a, critique group, and I said we could Zoom in the critique group, but one of them's like, I'm too old to figure that out. He's like, my computer's like a boat anchor, and the other person didn't want to. So we did start meeting in person about 2 weeks ago.
Really?
With masks, and, trying to social distance. But then the last 2 weeks when things have sort of gotten worse again, I was like, you know what, I'm a healthy person, but I've seen enough of people who've been plenty healthy and younger than me succumb to this, and I don't want to risk it. I'd rather just stay home and read a romance.
That is probably the safe thing to do. And you should tell them to try and get on Zoom. We got my parents on Zoom, so they're Zooming on my dad's tablet.
I got my mom on Zoom so we could have our cocktail parties. My mom and my sister and I, we have once a month now, we have a little cocktail party and,
Oh, I'm going to have to crash that. You're going to have to let me know one of these times.
They are pretty hilarious. The first time we did it, it was kind of late. Not late, maybe 8:00 or something we got on and at midnight, we were still going strong.
Some good cocktails.
My mom set her computer, she does it from her iPad, set it up right in front of, she has a hutch that has all their booze. And so she just set up right in front of it and, but every now and then Rachel would kind of lean over, like this, and she was reaching down to get a refill. So, yeah. So that's us, because we can't go out anymore,
I know. I miss my girlfriends. I know.
It's just horrible.
Yeah.
Anyways, today we're going to be talking about pet peeves in romance, because I have a couple.
A lot.
But if you read, these happen in every book, right? It's not just pet peeves in romance, but you read something and it's like yelling at the TV, right? It's like, no way, or that's dumb, or, something that makes you cringe. That's what we're talking about. And I have a couple.
Really? Are you sure?
But I don't think it's excessive. I don't think.
Okay.
I'll start.
You start.
One of my pet peeves is, in a romance, especially now, we want to read about a woman who is her own woman and she's out in the world and, she doesn't need a man, but, we have a romance, but she doesn't need him to be whole or to be in her thing. But sometimes we get these books where the author wants to depict her as being really kind of strong and her own person, but she really just comes off being obnoxiously snarky or bitchy or just it's unlikable to the point where you're like, why does this guy even like her? Because everything out of her mouth is just something kind of negative or with attitude or and that makes me crazy. That's I cannot be alone in that.
No, I know what you mean, that every comment is a smart alecky comment, and they're just it's constantly sniping type of thing, trying to be funny but sniping. I know what you mean, and you're like, why would, first of all, a lot of times I don't finish those books because I'm like, if I don't like the main character, why am I bothering? Right. I'm not invested because it's just it's I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Who has time for it? Yeah. And it goes, the other part of that, which I think I've added on my list, but it's part of the same is, especially in romances where the couple aren't supposed to like each other maybe in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So there's like a banter between them, but it's that same thing, that it tips over into something that might be humorous and clever, into something that's kind of mean and nasty. I don't like that either, because, a woman can be strong and she can sometimes be obnoxious, but to have everything that she says or does be sort of this automatic butt against what the guy is saying or doing or what somebody else is, it's just like too much.
Well, I just feel that you're not going to get a good romance, because to me that doesn't feel as though there's chemistry there when they're always sniping or being nasty with each other. So at some point there has to be some kindness, or something that's not so cruel. On the opposite end of yours, what you just said, one of my pet peeves is characters that don't talk. I mean, I get that there's an issue or conflict or something, and they might not talk for a certain period of time. But when you start something at the beginning and they're not having a conversation about it, and it doesn't end until the end, that just drives me crazy. And this actually goes to one of your pet peeves, the secret babies.
I hate secret babies. That's a trope. I hate secret babies.
Yeah. So they like reconnect, or the man's maybe been out of her life and she's raising this child or whatever, and like they reconnect and she just doesn't tell him at all about the baby. Yeah. Because they don't talk until like the very, very end. And I'm like, I find that a little unbelievable, especially if they start reconnecting, rekindling that romance or whatever, and you're not going to tell him.
Yeah. And that goes to motivation. And a lot of times there isn't sufficient motivation or sufficient reason for her to not tell. Or, there's a lot of times where it was just like one sentence could fix this whole thing. Saying what really happened or what you're really thinking could fix the whole thing. And if it's that easy, then that gets kind of annoying, because you're just like, oh my God, we're just, continuing on this road. But at the same time, there is sort of that interplay in romance, that idea of, that sort of disconnect between them. But you have to there's sort of a fine line between it being like, oh, come on, you have to say that versus why they wouldn't say the one thing that could fix everything, if that makes sense, because I think that's part of a romance anyway, that it takes a while to build the trust or whatever, to be vulnerable or whatever, but you gotta have a really good reason to do that.
Right. And you're right. I think you've hit the nail on the head with the motivation. you need to make it a strong enough motivation not to talk about something for the first 15 chapters or whatever, rather than all 30 chapters.
Yeah, because if the reader is like, oh, come on. Whereas if the reader is like, well, I could see why she didn't say that, or I could see why he doesn't want to say that to her, and you read enough of them, you kind of know, well, this is probably the thing that's going to be a problem at the end.
This will be our conflict, our major conflict.
But if you could buy into it, then you're good. But if the reader is like, oh, come on, just say something. I've read a couple books recently where it hasn't really been that, but it's and it's always the women for me. I always kind of, I don't know, maybe I give men the benefit of the doubt in books or something, but a lot of times the woman will be like, if the man is really trying and the woman is just not at all, not only won't meet them halfway, but won't even they're just like going backwards. And, I'm always like, why is the man keeping going when she's just like not even, and I know I'm not talking about forcing himself or, it's nothing like that, but he's making all these gestures, overtures, and she's just reading, bad stuff in it. Like he's just manipulating me or whatever. But I'm like, why is he even bother? So one of the books I just read, I was like, I would have walked out by now, I would have just been like, never mind, fine,
Yeah, you're right. There's got to be a reason for them to get something out of it. And if they're not in real life, people are going to walk away. Unless there's something keeping them together, like they're drug addicts together or something. I don't know. I don't read a lot of drug addict romances, but then there would be a codependency reasoning for them to stay together and being this way. But
yeah. Well, the book I just read, they were married, and she wanted a divorce, and he's trying so hard. They got 2 little kids. He's trying so hard. The book was good. I enjoyed it, but there were a couple times where I was like, man, he's just keeps taking a wallop, and she's just, and eventually she comes around. She does have a history that sort of is.
But do they? My question is, in that book that you're talking about, do they establish a history in which it's difficult for her to begin trusting him again, or something like that?
It's not that she doesn't trust him as much as that she has a history growing up that already sort of made it difficult for her to trust, and the marriage came about not in a regular way. She got pregnant and, they
got married. Yeah.
And, and then he has to travel a lot and stuff like that. So, already it was sort of, but they loved each other. But anyway, it was fine. But there were a couple times where I just thought, man, I would have left already.
I'm checking out.
So how about I have another pet peeve of cliche characters. And this came up in a book I read recently where the mean girl, there's always sort of a clique or something, and there's a mean girl, but when they're total mean girl cliche, or when the ex-boyfriend is a total douche, and I'm like, tell me why she went out with him. Like, why do I care about a woman that would let herself, I don't know. Cliche characters kind of bother me, and they're it's easy to fall into as a writer. I know sometimes it's like, well, I need to have sort of this other woman to kind of create conflict, but then I try to really be like, I don't want her to be a mean girl. I don't want it to be obvious that this is going to be a problem, or I want something about her that just doesn't make her this quote unquote mean girl, I don't know. What do you think about cliche characters?
Well, I think sometimes they're thrown in because that's where your conflict comes from, is this cliche character, and they tend to be very flat. Yeah. There's often not a lot of depth to them. So yeah, I think it can be an easy way out for a writer and may not be, and I think, like we've talked about in the past, that romances are smarter than they used to be. They're not just bodice rippers and that sort of thing. So we look for that deeperness. We look for more conflict. And in reality, in real life, you can certainly have, a woman who comes in and creates the conflict because, you get this kind of three-way issue going on. And I think that, yeah, in real life that happens, but she's not always the mean girl or the slutty woman or whatever. Oftentimes, sometimes they don't even know that the guy is married because he lied. Sometimes, things are going bad in his relationship and they just allow themselves to get carried away. And she's kind of a victim in a way too, because, maybe they're young and inexperienced and get caught up in something that they shouldn't be caught up in and makes it difficult for everyone. So I think if you create that depth, it's not such a problem. But yeah, when they're flat and they don't have, and we talked about it earlier, motivation, if it lacks that motivation, then
yeah, I agree with what you say about it sort of being the easy way. It's, it's the character everybody recognizes, right? So it's easy to sort of put them in as a player and everybody will know who this is and what's going on. But I agree that it's a little bit easy because I think you can up the tension a little bit or the conflict even by making them not so obvious to be the mean girl where we're not sure or we're wondering or just, and like you said, create a depth to them so that at least, there seems to be something more there than just, this mean girl or this douchebag guy, that she's to go out with. Because the other part of that, it does reflect on your character. So if your character is allowing themselves to be, beat up or manipulated, and I meant beat up like emotionally, not physically beat up, but, just sort of a victim of these, cliche people, then what does that say about your character? We want to root for these people. We want them to have some spunk and it's not that you're never going to have a character that doesn't ever get put upon or, abused emotionally or whatever. But I think it's much more, interesting if, through the character's eyes, we could see that it's not so obvious that person is sort of the mean person, that it's not always clear that they are out to get you or don't care about you.
Right.
And then we understand a little bit more about why they were in your lives in the first place. I don't know. That's just my.
No, it's true. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, I know when creating conflict, you can use like a situational thing to create a situation that creates this conflict, and then they're on either side of it, and then you don't always have to rely on that flatter character or whatever, because it's a situation. You all need to figure out how to deal with it, and if you can't deal with that situation, then your relationship's not going to make it through. And in reality, I think that's what a lot of us in real life go through, and why sometimes marriages break up, because the situations get out of control. Maybe someone loses a job, you're losing a lot of money. I actually remember reading years ago that one of the top reasons that couples fought and divorced was over money, which can become a situational thing. And if you can't get through that, then your relationship's not going to be able to stand. So I think with your flat character, you have more, you don't have to rely on that flat or cliched character as much if you use other different manners of conflict. You bring in different manners of conflict rather than just the old flame or the mean girl that is trying to catch your man or whatever. Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the things I wanted to bring up was one of your pet peeves, which I absolutely agree with, is weepy women.
Yes.
I've read books where like every chapter she's crying. I'm get a grip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suck it
up. Pull up your big girl pants and move on. Yeah, it detracts. When you have a woman, and it's not that they should never cry, but
Right.
when they do, you really know, okay, this is an emotional moment. But if they're always boo-hooing, I agree. It's just good golly.
Yeah, there are a couple of books, and I'm not going to say which ones right now that I've read. Some New York Times bestseller, one in particular. I remember she was like crying halfway, 50% of the book, and I'm like, yeah, girlfriend, get your act.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to say crying is a sign of weakness, because I don't. I mean, I believe you have to, you feel bad, you cry. I totally buy that. But when they are like through the book, just weepy, it's just like, come on, get it together.
Honey, go get yourself some Wellbutrin or Prozac.
Yes.
It's so much better.
Grow a backbone. I don't like that. I like it better when they sort of, do you remember in Dances with Wolves when the woman is explaining her name? It's like stands with a fist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what comes to mind. I'm like, just get on with it. Be strong, and again, I don't want to say that if you cry you're weak, because I don't believe that, but there is, when they're constantly weeping over every little thing, I'm like, I think you need to stiffen the lip and tell them off, or whatever it is that made them cry, they need to kind of stand up and be strong and cry later. I don't know.
Well, and there has to be a reason. Like, if you're suffering from postpartum depression, you're crying all the time because you have no sleep, you got a new baby. I get that.
Yeah. No,
if the Hallmark commercial makes you cry, I get that. But it's just constant drama, and I think that's part of what it is. It's like it's the drama queen type of thing, and we need to I have to step back, and that's just not one of the character traits that I enjoy.
I wonder if it's done as an attempt to create emotion in the reader, where the reader understands how they feel. And I'm like, use something else besides crying to let us know, that she's feeling devastated or whatever it is.
Because sometimes it's an emotional shutdown, and that can be very powerful into itself.
Yeah.
That if you explain that they just stare into this cold cup of coffee for 8 hours or something, right? Dinner doesn't get made, food doesn't get eaten, we don't go to work, we just lie there staring aimlessly at the television, trying not to think of whatever this emotional thing that has happened to you.
Yeah.
Rather than this constant sobbing.
Yeah. I definitely prefer books where, the writing is much more sensory oriented than, they just cried or whatever, but, where, their heart hurts or their chest hurts or, their shape, whatever it is. There's a lot of different ways to describe feelings beyond just crying, weeping, wah. So I also have on my list the words chuckle and giggle, which I understand for me are just like, they're mine. I think some of these other ones, a lot of people would agree with me on. Yeah, I don't like weak characters. Yeah, I don't like it when they, the woman comes off unlikable or, whatever. But the chuckle and the giggle, I don't like them. I mean, to me,
teenagers giggle. So I have teenagers giggle in my
girls giggle. Yes.
Giggling girls. I don't usually attribute giggling to women unless maybe they're inebriated or something.
Yeah.
The chuckle, though, I use men chuckle in my books. Women tend not to chuckle in my books, but men will give a guffaw or a chuckle.
Men chuckle. I read it was a you know how they have there's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but people have written books beyond that, you know, Elizabeth and Darcy's way. And one of them wrote that Darcy had chuckled. And I'm like, there's no way Darcy ever chuckled in his entire life. But in my mind, but you know, I think it's what I think of a chuckle. I mean, chuckles seem kind of pervy to me. You know, that's when I think of somebody chuckling, it's just sort of this hee.
I've never considered that. That is so.
So I don't use it. And I know that that's not what it means. You know what I mean? Like, I understand what a chuckle is. And I understand, like, when I read it in a book, I get the, you know, that it's, you know, he's not laughing. He's just, you know, has a little humor sound coming out. But in my mind, when I think of chuckle, that's sort of what I think of, you know? So it's why yeah. I don't like it. And then giggle again. You know, silly girls is usually what silly girls giggle. And again, that's just me. I'm not saying, you know, I'm sure I giggle sometimes, but I'm silly. So there you go.
Silly girls. We giggle all the time.
I think of, again, going back to Pride and Prejudice, I think of Elizabeth's younger sisters. They giggle.
Yeah.
You know, I think of giggle, I think of Lydia Bennet.
I remember back in high school, I think of hanging out with my girlfriends, and we would, you know, we'd see something and we'd giggle, or we'd hear something and we'd giggle. Yeah, we giggled when we were teenagers, because that's what young girls do. We giggle.
What's the difference between a chuckle and a giggle and a snicker?
I like snicker. Actually, I like snicker.
Yeah.
Someone snickered. I love a snicker or a snort.
I do. I use snort. I use
snort and a snicker. I use chuckle. And occasionally I'll use a giggle in an appropriate place, but I tend not to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I totally know that they're mine. I own them. Because every time I'll say like chuckle and giggle, people look at me like, what is wrong with you? Those are perfectly good words. But I don't know.
Are we giggling now, Leslie?
Maybe, but I'm a silly girl.
Oh, man.
Oh, I don't know. Do you have any others that are buggy?
No. Well, I'm never a fan of wallflowers. The like girl that is so shy she can't even function or speak properly to just anybody, whether it's male or female. Yeah, I kind of have issues with that. And I know that people are probably like that, but I think people are, you know, when they get to a certain age, they're socialized enough that even if you are shy, you can still make the effort, because you realize this is a societal thing and you need to make the effort to speak normally. I mean, unless your character, you know, has, you know, a social disorder or something like that. I just feel as though overwhelming shyness when you're just speaking to people normally. It's different if you're putting your person in a public speaking, and because I understand that public speaking is one of the biggest fears, even more than death for people. Like, that's a top fear, is public speaking. So I get that if people can't. But, you know, in a social situation, someone who's gone to a party that they've been invited to and even been introduced around or whatever, and they're just so scared to speak, they sit in a corner with their drink and everything. I'm like, why am I interested in this character if that's the way it's going to be? And then, you know, someone always sidles up, oh, hey, how are you doing? And, you know, they'll stumble around. And that, I'm not a fan of the weepy, shy wallflower. I think I personally prefer stronger women, but I also like women who have flaws and that sort of thing. I think it's important to have those.
I went on, I guess it was over at Goodreads, actually. This list came up where people were sharing their peeves.
Okay.
You know, some of those were interesting. Some of them were like instant love. You know, I saw across the room and immediately I had to have them. A lot of them didn't like that very much. One of them had to do with the euphemisms used in expressing body parts. And I will agree. Today I don't see, it's not a problem today. In the books I read today, there's not weird euphemisms. But if you read old romances, that include sexy bits, there's some interesting words that people
I still think, actually, if you ever read some erotica, man, there are some interesting euphemisms.
Yeah. I mean,
for their pieces parts.
If you're laughing and it's not supposed to be funny, but you're laughing because they're describing something, a throbbing thruster or something, I mean, you can't take that seriously. Come on.
Do you mean giggling or chuckling?
That's right. We should. I have chuckled and giggled recently with some of the books I've read, or maybe it was like a ha.
Goodness.
But sometimes some people's pet peeves, other people love it. So it kind of goes back to before we've talked about stuff where everybody has their own reading preference. So some people might like the wallflower person.
I think people do. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they write it. I'm sure there are people who are shy and can identify with that. I've never been accused of being a wallflower, so.
No, really? I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. But I mean, you could have a wallflower, but if fairly quickly in the story we were seeing growth, that they were coming into their own, you could probably go with that. But if they're kind of a wet rag through the whole thing, then that's,
exactly.
It's hard to get behind a character that is just sort of limp through the whole thing.
Yeah, if like in their first chapter they're that way, but then they start to grow and start a relationship or whatever, I'm good with that. But if they're if they're like you said, a limp rag, I'm out.
Yeah. So yeah, that wasn't so many pet peeves.
Okay.
But I am a picky reader. I will say, I mean, like I said, I can put a book down. If I put it down in the first chapter, a lot of times I'll go back and try and read it again. And try to give it 100 pages. Because a lot of times if I can get to 100 pages, if they finally hooked me in, I'm good to go. And anything that bothered me either was overcome or, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. But yeah, some things obnoxious women, that really does, mostly because I'm just like, I don't like you. Why does he, that's what, but, and sometimes I don't like the men either. I mean, they can be pretty obnoxious too, these alpha males. I mean, I like a good alpha male, but when they're really like
what we call alpha holes.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, come on,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the alpha hole at all. And I think that there was kind of a backlash a couple of years ago. I remember there was a bit, alpha males were really big, especially during the Twilight years when that first came out. And then there were a lot of them that came out, obviously, in the Christian Grey and that sort of thing. But then I think there was a bit of a backlash against the alpha hole situation. And I think we're seeing maybe a little bit less of that. Things change, like we've talked about in the past. It changes depending on societal norms.
Some of them really pushed the envelope to creepy. Like if Edward Cullen weren't a vampire, some of the things that he did would be, scary. Right? Coming into her room at night to watch her sleep.
Yeah, that's creepy, right? Well, and somebody said if Christian Grey wasn't rich, didn't live in this fancy house, but lived out in
a trailer.
In like a trailer.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that one time. We think he's pretty creepy and pervy.
Nobody would like him. Yeah. They'd be like, take your whips and chains and go somewhere else. But, you know,
on your trailer.
And maybe this is a show we could do sometime, is talking about because I think in romance we have greater diversity in how a woman can be depicted. But men almost always, maybe not alpha, but they are almost always tall, muscular, you know. They're not always broody. And I do like when I come across a male lead who, you know, is sort of light and fun and, you know, not that tall, dark and broody type. But even they are generally tall, handsome, you know, and you don't see very many beta males, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm wondering if, you know, there might be a reason for that. Would we not like that? Would he be seen as weak? I don't know. Would be an interesting thing to look into.
That would be. I hadn't really thought about it. I think there has been, actually, when there was the backlash, because I remember being part of a number of forums and groups that were talking about the alcohol and, you know, the backlash against it a little bit. And there were more women who were talking about writing more beta men. And maybe those are the kind of the jollier or happier guys that you're talking about, rather than tall, brooding, you know, doesn't say much.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm thinking about some of the characters that I've put in my my mysteries. I have a number of men in there, and I do have the tall, brooding kind of, he doesn't say much. But then I also have some other guys that have different, and they're not all tall, dark, and handsome, because part of one of the crew that I put together, they're vets. They're all vets. They've all done military service in some manner. So I have some of them who, one of them has a very deep scar running down half of his face. And I've had a lot of people, and I love that character. And I really have had a lot of people tell me they love that character as well. And so I like seeing kind of these men who aren't perfect for some reason or other. Maybe they have an injury, they have a limp, and I think we're seeing more of that, especially in military romances. I think we see those vets coming back, you know, and they're dealing with the PTSD, or they're dealing with losing a limb, or having, you know, some sort of scarring, physical scarring in some manner, and that sort of thing. And I like seeing that, and I think it brings a good bit of diversity. But I think we also got off topic on that. I wandered.
In the Bromance Book Club, he has a stutter.
Okay.
So, you know, that's, but yeah. And years ago, I read a book where he was in a tractor. He was a farmer in a tractor accident, and part of his leg was amputated. That was years ago. I haven't read something like that lately. But anyways, we are off topic. But it goes to the fact that sometimes overly alpha males can be, you know, the jerk ones can be, you know, same as the obnoxious woman. It's like, why are you even putting up with that guy? You know, because he's rich? No, that's the wrong reason.
That's not right.
Don't do that. But I'd be curious to hear what other people pet peeves were. I'd be curious to see if anybody else doesn't like chuckle or giggle.
So you'll all have to let us know after you listen to the podcast. Let us know what your pet peeves are. And what your romance pet peeves are, and whether you like giggle or chuckle, or if that bothers you too, or if there's a particular word. I had a roommate who couldn't stand the word moist in college. Anytime she was in the room, would be like, oh, hey, moist. Just to mess with her, you know?
Oh, wow, that's hilarious. There's Lauren Blakely has audiobooks, and she had, at the end of one, they interviewed two of her readers. And Sebastian York was one of the readers. I love him. And I can't remember who the woman was, but they were asked, what is the word you don't like to read? And he said, panties. So every time I write panties, I always think of him.
You're reading my book, Sebastian. You're going to have to read this word.
Okay, well, I wish I could remember hers, but yeah, panties. Because, you know, of all the words they read in these romances, but that was the one. He's just like, I know.
Because he's got to, I'm sure he's got to read some pretty steamy stuff.
Yeah, he does. He's a popular. He could read. I would be thrilled if he read I could listen to him read the phone book. I mean, he just has this amazing voice. So, yeah, readers make the difference in a romance, and there's a couple of them. There's a British guy. I don't even know if he's British, but he does all the British accents on the books that I listen to, and he's very good too. Can't remember his name, but anyway. So that's it for today.
Oh, that was great.
Pet peeves.
So everybody join us. Thanks for joining our conversation. And you can visit swoonworthyhea.com/podcast to find this show and share your thoughts. What are your biggest romance pet peeves? And hope you'll come back and visit us for other shows. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave a review as well. And the next time, I think we're going to be talking about rom-com, chick lit, and contemporary, the differences between the three.
I hope we can figure it out by then, because I still don't know.